Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're here for the Annotation Station's June fiction discussion of Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. Of course, if you're here, you know me. I'm Natalie. I'm joined by my amazing, incredible friend, Steph.
Hi.
We're very, very excited to talk about this
Yes.
book because we both really enjoyed it. Finally got Steph
Yes.
to read an Andrew Joseph White, which has been my mission for a while now. So
You have
I'm
succeeded.
glad she ended up liking this because I hadn't read it before I made her read it. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping Andrew Joseph White would pull through. And in fact, he did.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
okay, so should we get started with a summary of the book?
Sure. You want to give it a try?
I'll give it a shot. So we follow Miles, right? I'm pretty sure that's his name. We follow
Mm-hmm.
Miles, who is part of a family who has a history of being um what's the word I'm looking for? Fighting for, let's just highlight Roro's
Yeah.
first rights. You
Woo.
he has family members who worked in the mines, and there were worker strikes because of the foul conditions that the miners were put through. So, um, we follow him as he's uncovering a bit more of his family history, both older family history and some more recent stuff that
Mm-hmm.
his parents were involved in, and is part of why his family as a whole is like ostracized
Yes.
within their small community. um we also have a potential haunting going on, because pretty early on in the story, Miles is brutally attacked. And
Mm-hmm.
from that point onward, they start seeing who they think might be the ghost of one of his, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ancestors.
Ancestors, yes. So we're following more or less that. Steph, you can feel free to add anything to my awful summary.
Yeah. Yeah. They're dealing with a lot of small town tension
Mm-hmm.
because their family has been in the town for generations. They come from a family of I think it was coal mine. Was it a coal mine or was it railroad tracks?
I mean,
Workers.
well,
Both.
it's kind of both. It's
Yeah.
kind of both because it's more, I'm pretty sure that his ancestor saint
Mm-hmm.
was um murdered by railroad tracks and stuff like that, but it is about coal miners, because
Yes.
that's literally basically page one of the book is about coal mine strikes. So
Yeah.
that's part of the history
Um,
there.
yeah. This is a thriller,
Mm-hmm.
but it does border into horror. There are
Yes.
a couple horrific scenes in here, which what I was unexpected for me because I was like, "Whoa,
No, I was ready for it
I'm
because
with you." Though.
having read other Andrew Joseph Whites, I'm like, he cannot help himself. He needs the body horror.
Yeah.
It's just part of his writing. He cannot run away from it. So when those parts came, I was like, oh, I mean, I wasn't exactly surprised, but it was still disgusting.
I mean, I'm a body horror girly, so I was like, I'm living right now because that was unexpected for me. But but with that information, like it is a YA.
Yeah.
Um, so still look into the trigger warnings for it. I would say this is older teen.
Yeah.
Like it gets a little graphic sometimes, especially with like what Miles goes through, the
Yeah.
hate crimes that are committed. Just
Yeah.
check your trigger warnings, be ready because
Yeah. Like
things go
Andrew Joseph White doesn't pull too many punches.
down.
Even in his YA, like it's still pushing the boundaries there.
Yeah.
Um
If this is his YA, I am so excited for
I'm
his horror
scared.
adult debut.
I'm scared. I'm
I'm
gonna
hyped.
read it anyway, but I'm actually terrified. I'm like, Andrew Joseph White, what are you gonna do to me? I'm like, what are you gonna put me through? No.
I'm so excited.
I'm like, but Bessie, you also need to be ready because it's definitely part of it is about like the horrors of being pregnant. So
I'm
and worms.
Okay, but I love worm content. Give me the worm content. So listen, I'm ready to just be destroyed.
Yes. But anyway, formally, hi Roro. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. Happy Summerween. We also just got Damien here.
Valid, Damien. Valid.
You're valid, Damien. I like hurting myself. Can't help it. I do actually have a masochist streak. All right. I cannot deny it. It's the truth. That's why I keep coming back to this man, and why I'm so excited for Mindy McGinnis' adult debut. I'm like, she's deranged in YA. I don't even know what's gonna happen in adult, and I'm excited. I like hitting myself, but not like this. Fair. I like different kinds of hurt. This one is one of them. So, it is what it is. But should we go into our ratings for this book?
Let me pull up my story graph. Hold on, you go first.
I'm trying to remember too. I'm like, what did I go? I think yes. I think I went for 4 stars, like a solid 4 stars.
Okay. Hold on, mine is loading.
I wasn't fully enamored by it. It was still fantastic. Like, I still highly, highly recommend this book, and I'm proud to have this special edition with these beautiful sprayed edges.
Yes.
No regrets. But for me, it was still missing a little something to bring it up to that next level. I feel like it was tackling a bit too many things, and then it couldn't really deeply explore all of them. It still stayed a little bit surface level with the different things it was trying to do.
Completely fair. And I also rated it 4 stars.
Okay. You also gave it 4 stars. General feelings, thoughts.
Solid. General feelings. I want to put Miles in a bubble and protect them from the world. Like, okay, something that I really loved about Miles and Miles's family in kind of general, right? Mm-hmm. Is that, okay, first of all, preface, there ain't going to be no spoiler warning here.
So we're just going full in.
Listen, I
don't know whatever we want to talk about.
Too bad, so sad.
All right, so if you're staying here, get ready for us to just discuss everything we want to discuss. Yeah. Spoilers, probably galore.
Yes. So the thing is, his family has been there for generations, right? And they are dealing with another family that has been in power for generations also because they control most of the wealth. And in this time period, well, in the modern time that Miles is living in, their bullies are working in the police force. And so they have this kind of power that they've been clearly abusing throughout the entire community. And what I appreciate about Miles is he stood his ground.
Yeah.
And was like, it would make sense in some aspects. And I respect if people say like, hey, you are being bullied. You are outpowered and out-resourced at the moment. I would just move.
Yeah.
And Miles was like, this is my home. And I'm not going to let anybody bully me out of it. And I was like, slay, baby.
Yeah. No, Miles is very firmly in like, this might be a shithole small town, but it's my shithole. Yes. And I'm not leaving it. Yes, you can't make me. You can't coerce me. The good, the bad, the ugly, it's all mine. I don't care. Or maybe not as much I don't care, but I'm still gonna fight for it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna allow myself to be stepped all over and then forced to leave, to cower and leave. Like I'm not doing that shit. I'm like, yes, incredible, amazing, amazing. But I would say that there are moments in the book where he picks and chooses his battles because, like, to begin with, since the sheriff is a big component of who's in power, like, what was his name? Davies? Whatever his name was, I don't care. The sheriff, his family is the one who has been in power for several generations. And the sheriff rules by intimidation. And there have been moments where both Miles and Miles's family have allowed themselves to basically submit to that higher power. But basically, the moment a door opens for Miles to have some modicum of revenge, he's actually like, well, you know what? Sure. They're dead now. I don't give a shit. They can come for me. It doesn't matter because they're horrible fucking people. So you know what? Let's wreck their shit, actually.
Yeah.
Because the story starts with horrible things being done to Miles that we never really know the extent of it because Miles just blocks it out because it's so traumatic. But due to that, it's part of what sets the groundwork for Miles actually being like, you know what, actually maybe I should fight back more. I should live into the spirit of like my rebellious ancestors and actually get some shit done here. No, I was not thinking of the other C word at all.
But it would fit.
But it would fit, you know, if the shoe fits. If the shoe fits, you know, I don't blame you for thinking that's where I was going. But yeah.
But yeah, for real. And also I loved that by the end of the book, Miles was a little firebrand socialist and was like, I'm ready for revolution. And I was like, let's go. Tell me where to bring the matches. We ride at dawn. Like, let's go.
It was already a seed inside him.
Yes.
He was just not fully living into it yet.
Yes.
Because part of what he loved about learning about his family history was their history of like socialism and fighting for workers' rights and all this kind of stuff. He found that very inspiring, motivational. And then we're just following him as he goes through a journey that leads him into actually living more into that history that he has, that his family has.
Yeah. Something that I loved about this book is, okay, hear me out. I'm not sitting here and telling anyone that to go commit violence. Okay. Be clear about that. I'm not saying that. But it is important to recognize that there's peaceful protest, and then there's recognizing that the people with the power that you are protesting against don't care.
Yeah.
Right? And so if they don't care enough to listen, then the next step of action is remove them from their power.
Yeah,
exactly. And so unfortunately, in this situation, it ended up becoming a violent means of removing that power. And also that the sheriff was deranged to like another level of the things that they did. But I liked that we got to see not just the entire thing resting on Miles' shoulders, but it becoming a community effort in revolution.
Yeah. Need it on a shirt. I don't need you to commit violence, but
listen.
But yeah, no, like a very important aspect of the story is like you can't actually do these things on your own, you know?
Yeah.
And I also feel like a significant part of this story as well is that, like, there are times where violence feels necessary, but that doesn't mean that it's easy to live with. That maybe you participate in these acts of violence, but that doesn't mean that then you go to bed and you're like, nothing is bothering me. I am
Yeah.
totally comfortable and okay. Like, those acts actually stay with you, whether you're the recipient of them or the one committing them.
Mhm.
um and you can understand their importance, but that doesn't mean you have to be like, everything is fine. um
Mhm.
it's a lot more complicated than that.
Mhm. Absolutely. Nobody here is fine. Like,
Literally not a single soul,
no.
not a
Even
single soul here
yeah.
is okay, doesn't
Even
start
though
okay, doesn't finish okay.
yes, even though the villains of this town received their comeuppance, the people who survived and got, you know, justice was served, they're not okay. Like
Yeah,
nobody's okay.
yeah,
And
no.
that's more realistic in my mind. So I did
Mhm,
appreciate um Andrew Joseph White for doing that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, to me, this ties into the reviews I saw of this book, that I don't know why so many people read this book and consistently thought that Miles was put in the higher moral ground, because I don't see that at all. Like, they were saying that as they read, they felt like Miles always had to be in the right, like, or at least more right, more correct than the other characters. And I'm like, I don't think
Rare.
that's the point of his story at all. Like, there are moments where he's trying to rationalize things, because we get to a point where, first of all, the ball really starts rolling when Miles accidentally kills someone. It's true.
Mhm.
Like, it's an accident. And at the time, actually, if you're, you know, a neurotypical person, you also wouldn't understand why he doesn't feel any guilt for what happened. And
Mhm.
he's like, it just kind of happened. Dude's dead now, I guess. Oh well. Because it's a kind of detachment from events that I can understand. Like, I read that moment and I was like, I understand exactly why Miles is not reacting to this the way the average person would.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah.
in many ways, I'm like, that inherently already makes it so, like, you're questioning Miles to an extent, because it's like, what do you mean this dude just died in front of you, and just kind of like, all right, actually,
Yeah.
let me just get some help with this body because I can't deal with it.
Mhm.
Let me, who the hell can help me? I
Exactly.
care about the practical elements of this situation, which is, there is a body, therefore there needs to be a hiding of the body. It cannot stay here.
Yes.
Um,
And I mean, like, I completely sympathize with Miles and understand, because it's not like it was just a rando person. It was one of his bullies
yes,
who had just committed a hate crime against him like the
literally.
previous week or whatever. So,
Yeah.
like,
I'm pretty
Miles
sure he
being,
was the one recording the hate crime happening.
yeah,
Like, worst kind of bystander, you
right. So
know?
it's like, oh, my bully, oop, they did. So, like,
Okay, then.
honestly, if I was a prosecutor, I'd be like, baby, I'm on your side. Let's go. You didn't do it. You didn't do it. It was an accident. He tripped because he was all up in your face, and that's not your fault. But but the reality is, because of the way that Miles handles the situation, now he's an accomplice
Yes.
in this murder. And so it calls his best friend, and best friend's like, YOLO, I'm driving, getting my pickup truck. I'm headed over there right now.
Yep. And the best is also like, actually, how about we hit up the other ones too?
Mm-hmm.
Know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
so then later, Miles actually has to confront the idea of premeditation. Like, there's one thing for something, honestly, that benefits you, really, to accidentally happen, even if it's still an unfortunate thing, because ultimately the death of a young man is not a positive thing. This is
Yeah.
not a neutrally positive, like, no, a net positive thing. But there's one thing, there's a big gap between that happening and actually planning to use a weapon in your father's possession to purposefully go after someone who harmed you and then actually taking their life. Like,
Yes.
there's a huge gap there, and Miles has to reconcile that in the moment it happens, because Cooper is supposed to be the one who's all riled up, ready to go, guns blazing. Um, but then he's also confronted with the discrepancy between wanting to do something and actually doing something as big as taking someone's life,
Yes.
because it ultimately is a huge decision to make.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something that they both grapple with in very different ways, but it doesn't mean that Miles's way is better.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to add to what you're saying, because yes, so even though when the time comes to pull the trigger, Miles is like, hold up, maybe we can go about doing this another way. They still were initiating the steps that it took to acquire the weapon.
Yeah.
So they have a direct hand in this event, and therefore their morality is like gone.
Yeah, it's like they are not morally better when literally, even in the eyes of the law, they are literally an accomplice to a crime. Like,
Yes.
whether the person they were after ended up dead or not, if that person decided to press charges, if they were alive or whatever, they would still be held accountable for that. If the evidence was there, they would still be held accountable because you took part in planning this event. It doesn't matter actually if you pull the trigger or not yourself, if you were there helping to make this situation come to be,
Right.
you know?
And so I feel like it's important to note that, like, again, the reason that Miles at the last minute with the second event is like, hold on, don't pull the trigger. Let's see if we can get out of this without anybody dying, is not because they're on the moral high ground. It's because they're scared. They're like, we're about to open up an avalanche of pain. Do we want to deal with this? I don't feel like dealing with this. So it's not that they're doing the right thing. It's they're feel fearful of the consequences of what they're about to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is, to an extent as well, a recognition of the humanity of the other person there in the room with him. Because I feel like, even though we don't get Cooper's perspective, like, the rage Cooper feels is in many ways on behalf of Miles, because Miles is able to, let's say, compartmentalize his feelings. Like, he can hold within him the idea that what was done to him by this person was wrong, but that doesn't stop them from being a person, especially a person showing remorse, that therefore an opportunity should not be given to them. Cooper is a lot more like, no, they did this horrible, horrible thing to you. They should pay for that shit. And, like, again, I don't think either of them is necessarily better than the other. It's just different lenses. And I'm pretty sure Miles, later on, when he thinks about it, he's also like, Cooper actually might have been right. Like, if he had actually listened to me, there is a possibility where this whole spiel that he gave us right before we actually ended it all was all a lie. And he would have run off and told whoever the hell what we did, and we would have been in an even worse shithole than we already are. So there's still a sense of self-preservation there, which is inherently selfish, whether good or not. It's a selfish instinct that we have as human beings.
Yeah.
You know?
Something that I also thought about in retrospect after reading the book is that I feel like Cooper had multiple motivations. So one, like you said, as an ally to Miles is like, yo, you're my homie and they did some messed up shit to you and I'm not about to let that slide now that I have an opportunity, right? But also that what we learn is most of the town has beef with the sheriff and his kid and their posse because they're not just bullying Miles' family, they're bullying most of the town. And so it's kind of like an open secret. And so I kind of see Cooper as the person who's like, you know what? Out of everybody who's here, I got the least to lose because stuff already happened to me that put me at the bottom of the barrel. And so what more can I lose? And somebody needs to do it. So let me go. You know, like is like sees themselves almost as a martyr, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I'm not saying that that makes them morally right. You know, Cooper definitely gets their own comeuppance later on because of what ends up happening to them. But
yeah, no, Cooper is actually, I feel like, one of my favorite characters in the book because he's so complex and messy. His morality is all over the place because you can understand in many regards as someone who might have a close friendship with someone that desire to protect them and do anything for them. Like that ride or die instinct can truly be there. And Cooper was going to stand on business. But ultimately, Cooper's also not a perfect person. And part of that was complicated by his romantic feelings for Miles. And the fact that to start the book, Miles has just barely come out to his parents. And so that leads to him coming out to Cooper, who then has to go through his own process of understanding what does that mean for me, how I've been living my life, how I've thought of myself. And if I'm interested in this person, in this case being Miles, what does that say about self-reflection that I need to do? And am I ready to do that reflecting that is necessary? And oftentimes in the book, we see actually how on the surface, Cooper might seem very accepting and supportive, but there's actually a lot more going on in the interior that often comes out in messy outbursts that show that he's actually struggling with Miles' identity and his own identity in ways that are not pleasant, that are not fun to enjoy in either direction as either Cooper himself or as the recipient of his vitriol at times.
100%. Couple thoughts about Cooper there. One is that like aside from Miles eventually coming, I think they were also came out as Arrow.
Eventually, I think that happens much later on because it takes him a while to get there. Because to begin with, they don't understand their own feelings towards Cooper.
Yeah. But I also think Miles had a completely valid concern in the sense of like, oh, okay, it's cool that my best friend is accepting right off the bat of me coming out. And it's not like I'm not having a strong issue with them like I'm having with my parents. But at the same time, them having romantic feelings does bring up the question, do they still see me as the person I was before because it fits into their whatever mental picture they have of what a relationship should be like? And in that way, do they think that this is actually a straight relationship? You know what I mean? So that it didn't really get flushed out because of everything else that happened. But I was like, that's a valid concern for Miles to have. But one thing that I didn't like, this is probably like one of my few criticisms of the book and why I didn't give it 5 stars, is I didn't like that Cooper ended up becoming villainous in some way at least I felt like towards Miles, where their rejection more or less made them stalkery. And like it went from caring about Miles to putting Miles in some really uncomfortable positions, aside from like being an accomplice. Like that's his own uncomfortable position, but uncomfortable in the sense of like, you're mine. What are you talking about? You know, like this like claiming of them. And I'm like, I didn't need that.
Yeah. I think that's something that Andrew Joseph White likes exploring, because it is an element in Hell Followed With Us. The main character there also has a very complicated relationship with someone that basically, because in Hell Followed With Us, there's basically two different communities, a super hyper religious one, and basically rebels that live outside of that. And in the hyper religious community that he grew up in, he develops this relationship with this guy that's very similar to Cooper in that regard, that like he loves him, but it's kind of like, do you actually see me for me? And ultimately, what are you going to put first? Your beliefs or your love for me? And kind of the difficulty of actually letting go of that, because in some ways it's like the only person to even just superficially support you, and letting go of that is hard, even if that person is far from perfect in their acceptance. And so I felt like this was not exactly the same, but a similar iteration of that complicated dynamic, because I feel like oftentimes YA paints it as either or. You're either the bad villainous person who is homophobic, racist, or whatever it may be, or you're supportive and loving and very intersectional in your thinking. When many people exist in the messy middle space, that's a lot harder to stomach. I think that that's something that Andrew Joseph White is very interested in exploring through fiction.
I can 100% understand that and say like, I support it. I support it 100%, wanting to explore that space, because like you said, it's more realistic that people exist more commonly in that in-between space. I think for me, the way he went about it, I kind of wanted to be a little different. Like, I personally would have liked it to be seen as a, well, if you're not 100% with me, then you're against me kind of thing. You know, as like letting the rejection kind of lead them to making of a rejection of Miles in a way, not of who they are, but of like of instead of trying to hold on tighter to Miles, will be like, well, fuck you too then, you know, kind of thing. I don't know. For me, I didn't see it in Cooper's character to become hyper possessive like that, but maybe that's just my interpretation of it.
I mean, I also kind of agree with that. I mean, when I started the book, I did not think that's where we were headed at all. I kind of just went like, oh, okay, this is where you're taking us. All right, I'll go down that route with you. But I feel like it wasn't established well enough from jump for me to fully be all in on like, okay, this is the natural path that Cooper's storyline took. But I feel like it, regardless of that, it doesn't stop how devastating his death is in the end, because he is brutally murdered. And reading about his father, who's a single dad, because the sheriff's violence against Cooper's family also meant that his mother has been dead for several years. Seeing that grieving father have to face life now, not only without his wife, but without his only son, was still horrible. Like, I feel like this book perfectly tries to hold space for people can be messy and flawed and do terrible things, but that doesn't mean that the grief people feel over them is any less real or important to let them feel and experience. You know?
That poor man.
That poor man. I was like, oh my gosh.
he was the one I wanted to hold and be like, we need to put him on a watch. I need to rely on him
Literally,
24/7 because
literally on a
oof,
watch.
oh, my heart. I think that part, if anything, that part really broke my heart. The part where he sees Cooper and then he's on his knees screaming. And
Yeah,
not only is he on his knees screaming, but Miles' father, I think, is the one who ends up holding him in that moment.
yeah.
And just the dad's trying to console. I was like, I can't do this.
I know. I know. It was a lot. It was a lot. It really was.
It was a lot. Also, okay, speaking of parents, I feel like we have so much to talk about with this book.
Yes.
So, hear me out. At least,
I'm listening.
at
My
least
listening ears.
in the stories that I've majoritively read of
Mm-hmm.
people coming out to their parents,
Mm-hmm.
I've usually come across the mother being the accepting one and the father being the one with the hyper masculinity that's like, not my child,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But here it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And I weirdly found that refreshing. Like obviously it's horrible and like it's fucked up that the mom was struggling,
Yeah.
also refusing to talk about what
Yeah.
she was struggling with. I'm like, bitch, can we sit down and have a family meeting?
Yeah. No, seriously, Miles's mom was giving family meeting. It's time for family meeting. Why are you saying no to the family meeting that we need?
Yes.
You know? Um, but I did like in some way, in a weird way, I also did like that different, form of that where the dad, because the dad still struggled, like both parents in
Sure.
this still struggled with accepting um Miles's truth. They both took a while to process that information. It was just that Miles's dad was much faster in being like, okay, I'm still a little bit lost, but if this is what your truth is, then I'm going to do my part to learn and grow so
Mhm.
that I can care for you as you need to be cared for. Um, but Miles's mom definitely struggled with it a lot more, needed a lot more time.
Yeah.
And Miles' dad did try to be, at some points, like, let me cook with her.
Yeah.
Give it some time, okay? And we're gonna make it happen. But patience.
Yeah.
Okay, I hated how Miles was more mature than his mother. Kid literally tried to initiate conversation several times.
Multiple
It's true.
times.
It's true. Like to begin with, like very, very early on, Miles was also avoidant because that's a thing that is talked about in the book as well. Like both his mom and himself are avoidant types. They'd rather not deal with conflict, not confront things that are uncomfortable. But ultimately, Miles decides, like, no, I need to actually try to get this to go somewhere because otherwise I won't have what I need to
Mhm.
be happy,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Miles's dad is very much he a little bit confused, but he got the spirit,
Like, all right. He's like, I got questions, but that's okay. I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did like that I feel like if I remember correctly, the grandparents were actually more okay with it than Miles was expecting.
Yeah. The grandparents were kind of like, bro, we don't give a shit. Okay, we got bitches to fight.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're a boy, sure.
Yeah. They were
Sure.
like, whatever. Okay, baby,
Um,
let's go.
it's like we got bigger fish to fry. Alrighty. Like
Yeah.
there was still a little bit of confusion, but it was ultimately in a like, we don't care. We got things to do. All right.
Yeah.
So there was that.
Yeah.
Um
Oh, we have not really talked about Saint.
yeah, we haven't really talked about Saint. I was also thinking about him. I personally kind of loved the whole Saint storyline, learning about this ancestor in Miles's family. him learning that they were also trans. They had a lover, a partner, a loving partner, that they made a family, and the unfortunate collapse of that family, between I can't remember the name of Saint's partner.
I don't
cannot
remember.
recall at all. But him, I'm pretty sure he died in the mines, and that was part of what led to Saint being like, no, I can't stand for this shit anymore. I need to do something about that. But it also ultimately leads to his own murder.
Mhm.
And
Brutally too, because that's how the book kind of opens.
yes.
Yeah.
For me, actually, that was one of the brutal parts that I'm like, I cannot properly visualize this, so I am not properly horrified or disgusted by it. I'm kind of like, I don't understand. Okay, then whatever you
I
say.
saw it. I saw it clear as day in my mind, and I was like, ugh.
I know when you started reading, you were leaving comments in the Discord. So I was like, oh, I guess that was kind of gross. I didn't really properly visualize it, so I couldn't be like, ew, nasty. I'm like,
Fair.
okay.
Fair.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. So my thoughts on Saint, I have positives and I have negatives. And
Yeah.
again, I think the negatives are more just a taste thing. So my positives are I loved Saint. I love the history. I love that Miles did this like familial like research and ended up finding someone in their family who was trans and that they identified with, and kind of like became this symbol of perseverance despite the adversary that they share.
Mhm.
I loved all of that. My only thing that I didn't vibe with was the whole ghost thing.
Yeah.
Like for me, I would have just been happy enough knowing that Miles found someone through history to admire, and
Mhm.
to, by the end of the book, be like, I hope you're watching over me. I hope you know that we finally won, kind of
Yeah.
thing. I didn't necessarily need them to actually be an apparition. But like,
Fair.
whatever,
I mean, I do think it's one of the parts of the story where I'm like, this could have used more development to
Mhm.
make more sense. Because I do feel like ultimately, because a lot of the stuff that Miles learns is a combination of the apparition and actual documents.
Mhm.
It kind of leaves space for like, is everything that Miles has learned actually true?
Right.
You know, I mean, one could go down the route of like your ancestors actually visiting you, and like that information you gain from making contact with your ancestors through spiritual means still being a valid form of
Mhm.
gaining knowledge about your family. But
Right.
I don't know how completely successfully that was accomplished in this book, but I can see that being part of maybe like the intent
Mhm.
of it all. But I basically cut it some slack. I was like, it's okay. It's okay. We'll believe everything because yes.
Yes.
um yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about it.
That's fair. Totally.
Um Completely unrelated to the darker, well, maybe not completely unrelated, but significantly
Okay.
unrelated to the darker themes, is, girl, the way I thought from the very beginning that Miles knew he was autistic. I thought he knew. I thought we all knew. I'm like, you're your
Look,
daddy's autistic, your mama's autistic. I thought we all knew.
everybody's autistic.
I thought we all knew. I'm like, what homies are you hanging out with that are chewing motherfucking shoelaces, that are rocking back and forward, that don't have a whole struggle with taking a shower? I'm like,
Baby,
homie, baby,
baby was
baby,
stimming the whole time.
literally unable to not stim
Yes.
the entire book. And he's like, everything is fine. I'm like, you are autistic, which is fine, but you need to know what that actually means for
Yes.
you and your life. Okay,
Yes.
bro?
It's very important that we understand the concept of stimming and why it needs to be embraced.
And how there are ways to make activities that might seem unbearable a little bit less
Literally.
unbearable. Because there's a whole scene here about I'm pretty sure she's a woman. Yeah, an older woman who is autistic has been diagnosed, got a later in life diagnosis, being like, I know you don't want to take a shower, but you need to take a shower. But we can do this, and we can turn off the lights. We can do this other thing. We can turn on a fan. You can use earplugs and all that to therefore be able to more successfully and comfortably take a shower. No, you do not have to put on clothes while you are still wet. You can just sit there and wait until you're dry.
Yes.
And
I think it was
this
Amber.
task.
It was someone's sister.
I think
It was Amber.
or it might have been the wife of someone, because it's like Miles develops a bestie with, I forgot their name.
I think Dallas is their name.
Yeah, with Dallas. And I'm pretty sure Dallas is the brother. Like Dallas has a brother, and the brother is with this other person.
Something like that.
I think it's something along those lines. And so she again has developed some coping mechanisms and strategies to be able to more comfortably live with the limitations of her diagnosis. And she's like, honey, I can't diagnose you, but clearly you're having these issues and we can do these things to make it better. So how about we do that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was literally though sitting from page 1. I was like, okay, so the whole family is autistic. I'm cool with that. Okay, we see it, we love it, incredible. And then Miles hitting me with, I didn't know. I was like, what do you mean you didn't know? You might as well have a neon sign above you that says I'm autistic. I'm like,
cutie pie.
okay, sure.
Oh, I love Miles for that though.
That part was kind of funny to me because it was truly so clear to me. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, so we're in a different kind of closet made of glass. Okay. I'm like, okay, it's not the typical closet, but okay, it's still made of glass though.
It's like Futbolista all over again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Honey. But that was funny. Oh, sweetie. So yes.
Hear me out. When I was 15, I used to say, I want to be a boy, but I'm not trans. Sir.
It's okay. We've all been in denial about something at some point.
Sometimes you're literally the last one to know things about yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Quite literally.
It can happen.
Oblivious.
I mean, it's true. It's true.
And so, yeah. What else? Yeah, I really, really liked that at the end of this book, towards like the last quarter of the book, that Dallas's family, I think, is the one who owns the bar or whatever, where they're starting to have these meetups and being like,
yeah, the diner, I'm pretty sure it is.
The diner, yeah. They run the restaurant or wherever that they're putting out flyers and they're like, hey, we are against what's happening in this town. The sheriff is corrupt, but like they're the ones who are putting the target on their back.
Yeah.
But that their actions lead to it. The whole thing is a community effort.
Yes.
That it wasn't just, even though Miles was like the lead person in the whole scene that led to the sheriff's demise, that the entire town got together. And when the feds came up and they were like, have you seen this sheriff? They were like, don't know. Maybe he's on vacation. We don't know.
Like, we don't know what's happened to that man. But yeah, no, part of the Dallas storyline that I enjoyed was Dallas is one of the victims of like the incident that led to the death of Cooper's mom.
Mhm.
And their family does actually leave the town after this happens because the bullying that Dallas is dealing with, not only being disfigured from the fire that they survived, but also being fat, meant that they had to not only deal with healing physically and mentally from the ordeal, but being consistently subjected to poor treatment from the people around them. And so they do leave, but it's a purposeful decision to come back, to
Mhm.
actually take some time, to be fair, to heal, to be stronger in a better place, and then come back and be like, actually, no, we're not leaving this place. You're not kicking us out of here. This is still our town, and we're gonna fight for what we think is right for the better future of our town.
Yeah.
And so they use their diner or whatever it is as an epicenter of that, of like getting like-minded people together who want to protest
Mhm.
against what is happening, like the vile things happening
Yeah.
in their town.
I feel really bad that their family ended up losing the business because the police set it, like the bully set it on fire, and
Yeah.
it was just really sad that that's the way it kind of went down. But that moment was basically a catalyst that led to the rest of the book, and being like, you know what, we've had enough time for violence.
Yeah.
Like they, even though there was violence the entire time, it was the most open violent act in recent history that everyone knew, okay, the bullies started this physical fight, so now we got to end it with the physical fight.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So that was like a pinnacle moment. What else?
I don't know. I feel like we've been on a roll for a good while. So
Yeah.
frankly, actually, we've done pretty well here. Just one thing after another.
Yeah, we said a lot.
Yeah. So
I don't know if there's anything else I really wanted to say.
um
I had a great time.
I feel like those were the big things, to discuss. I think we talked about all the big points
Yeah.
of the story. So
Should we say what we're reading next month?
yes, go ahead and talk about that.
Pulling it up right now.
I'm like, I'll let you take the lead here because I actually successfully managed to actually run this live show. Originally, I was going to
Yes.
put it in your hands,
Good
but
job, Beth.
kind of got on a roll. I was like, oh, I do actually remember this book and I do actually have things to say. Let's
Yes.
go.
Okay, so our one for next month is a horror. It's a novella, and it is also a historical fiction. It is Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. It takes place in 1915, and it's, as far as I understand, hunting demons who wear white hoods, if you catch my drift.
Yes.
I think, if I understand correctly, it might be in a similar vibe of, we're not giving up our town, so let's deal with this demon infestation. Yes. I'm excited for that.
Yes. Yes. Very excited.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So,
We're ready to do some sprints in a little bit.
yep, I think so. So,
Okie
please join us during our productivity sprints. We're going to be
dokie.
chilling there. So, hopefully, we'll see you there.
Okie dokie.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. See you a bit.